Hi, I'm Jillian Rochevelle.
And I'm Angela Facundo. Jillian and I are content strategists from Logical Design Solutions. Today, we're going to talk about the ways in which a content strategist can collaborate with artificial intelligence, or AI. A lot of people are talking about AI in business today, and how it's going to usher in new ways of work. Accompanying this discussion is an underlying fear that AI will be replacing jobs for people. But the dominant consensus is our key message. The content strategist plays a central role in maximizing the business value that AI will bring to enterprise content. The dominant consensus, that is that AI will be changing how everybody works. So businesses have to start thinking about the role of AI in the organization, but also the changing roles for humans whenever AI comes into play. As content strategists, Jillian and I have been thinking about how content people can work with AI. I recently went to Confab Central in June of this year, 2017, and it was a very productive conference for content strategists in general. But a glaring omission that I've noticed is that people aren't talking about AI yet. And I spoke to Christina Halverson after her workshop, and she assumed that it wasn't applicable or it was too far away or too future-oriented, and she admitted that it was a bit of a blind spot. So people who don't directly build or work with AI might find the concept of it intimidating, like how does it work, how is it relevant, or they might find it not applicable to their work directly. This was the central question that Jillian and I sought out to address. What is the future of content in the world of AI?
And so we came away from the research that we did with a few key takeaways about, what is the future of content as AI increasingly becomes a partner or assistant even in content work. And the first key takeaway that we came away with was that new digital experiences means content will move into new realms through AI processing. So those new digital experiences might be chatbots or voice interactions, or, I think this is kind of a sci-fi thing, virtual reality. It's still sci-fi in the minds of many people, but as content moves into these new realms, we're constantly having to ask the question, what's the role of the content strategist? Because even though these are new experiences, they're still going to require some form of content. So in order to design for these new experiences, content strategists will need to acquire some new technical skills. And that's another key takeaway that resulted from our research into this topic. In order to provide the structured data that AI needs to provide meaningful analysis, content strategists will almost need to become like data scientists, expanding their conception of what constitutes content. And that's something that we'll talk in more detail about throughout this presentation. Our third key takeaway is that as AI takes on the more content operational tasks, like simple content creation based on specific inputs, this will result in a cost reduction, but there's also potential opportunity for content strategists and the work they do. And again, that's something we'll talk in more detail about during this presentation. Finally, because content will be increasingly viewed as training data, businesses will begin to shift their thinking about content from viewing it as a cost or an expense they are reluctant to invest in to a business asset that's worth investing in. So we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. But these are sort of the big takeaways that we got from this research.
Now, in general, when we think of artificial intelligence, what comes to mind? Images from fiction, particularly from film and television. These imaginative stories either idealize AI, like in the case of Data from Star Trek, or they are an object of horror and fear, like in the case of Ex Machina, in which the AI kills its creator. The one image that refers to real life in this slide is the Tesla wheel, and I've included it here because it has entered into the popular imaginary and everyone wants a Tesla. But we are culturally immersed in representations of AI, which speak to our anxieties about the future, that AI will mark either our deliverance or demise. For example, the still from a Black Mirror episode shows the protagonist interacting with an AI of her dead fiancé, built from his social media profiles. There's this combined sense of risk that it's invasive, it's uncanny, it's unhealthy, like when you're going to finally disconnect to deal with your real life. And I think it carries over into the business ecosystem with the fear of job loss, job replacement, and the risk of a machine getting out of control in the workplace. This is why it's very important to prioritize ethical design and prioritize the role of a human in collaboration with AI. I want to move to another example called InspiroBot, which satirizes and plays on all of these ambivalences and anxieties we have with AI. So, for example, it says here, I'm InspiroBot. I am an artificial intelligence dedicated to generating unlimited amounts of unique inspirational quotes for endless enrichment of pointless human existence. That's my favorite. And one of my favorites is, our modern societies are made of 99% ambition and 1% a lie. So this AI, as you can see, follows a set of rules. A human who is designing the content sets up grammar and syntax rules and parameters at the phrase level, which are then randomized, and seemingly infinite permutations and combinations of these phrases are generated by the AI. The humor comes from the juxtaposition between the surreal, sometimes dark phrasing, and the inspirational image that would comprise an inspirational poster. InspiroBot then learns how much inspiration you generate, how much inspiration you need, and eventually will undergo its own existential crisis and will break down.
So I think, as Angela said, the humorous and surreal nature of the quotes and images generated by InspiroBot highlights one of the recurring fears that people have about AI, and that's that it will do things that we human beings don't intend for it to do, like generate phrases like, cats are going to fill the world with pain. A personal favorite. These quirky juxtapositions point to the very real need for adequate data to train an AI so that it has outputs that we want and not such quirky outputs that might disturb us a little bit.
Okay, so let's set up our own parameters here and define our terms. What do we mean when we talk about AI? This question is harder to answer than you'd expect because this definition is under debate. What is AI? People often quote the first definition of AI, which John McCarthy coined for us all the way back in 1955, defining it as the science and engineering of intelligent machines. In a general sense, an intelligent machine can carry out tasks that typically only humans can do, and that bar changes throughout history, right? So that's why AI is under debate right now. That's the general definition of AI. Machine learning is a very particular type of AI where the machine gets smarter and improves independently from human intervention. All major advances in AI is in machine learning. And I wanted to point out that even more specific type of AI is called natural language processing. That kind of AI is especially relevant to content strategists because it works with words. In the case of a conversational assistant, for example, it hears words, it transcribes them into written text, it generates a response, and then reads the response with its own voice. But that raises the question, what constitutes AI as opposed to mere automation? That line between AI and automation changes, and that's the nature of the debate today. The field divides into two camps. AI generalists define artificial intelligence as a series of algorithms that complete a very narrow, specialized set of tasks. You can associate this camp with Mark Zuckerberg. AI generalists define what machine learning can do today. An example of this is your assistant adjusting the temperature of your home by controlling a smart thermostat or a smart bike, or any kind of reinforcement learning as applied in games, such as when AI plays chess or Go. So an AI can be designed to complete a task that would be quantitatively difficult for a human to carry out, like processing vast amounts of data and learning how to do it in an increasingly efficient way. But it won't be able to learn how to do anything beyond that set of tasks. The AI can change your thermostat, but it can't automatically play Go unless the design is updated. AI literalists, on the other hand, the different camp, like Elon Musk, are a little bit more aspirational. They think that AI generalists aren't ambitious enough because what generalists consider to be artificial intelligence, literalists believe to be mere automation. Hence that line. What is automation? What is AI? AI literalists, or purists, believe that true AI involves a single algorithm that functions like a blank slate, resembles more like a human child. And it involves qualitative, more human-like thinking that can learn from the senses the way that a child would. Literalists strive to find what people in the field call algorithmic generality, and you'll be hearing that term, I think, more and more as we get closer to it, because it doesn't exist yet. Generality is a point of arrival where AI can learn anything, not just as a specialist of a narrow, predetermined set of tasks. This would be the pinnacle of unsupervised learning. The AI's learning is completely autonomous in this case. It's a little confusing because the root word general applies to both camps in contradictory ways. There's a generalist on the one hand and generality on the other, and they diverge. For the AI literalist, true AI doesn't exist, so that's generality. The closest thing we have to it is the self-driving car, because the car is learning how to drive based on what it senses from the road.
So as Angela noted, there's still some debate about what actually constitutes AI, but that hasn't stopped disciplines like content strategy from using it and positing new uses for AI in the service of content strategy. In this section, we've gathered some thinking from content strategy experts on how they view the future of content as AI becomes more of a partner in content work. So there are some comments here about operational uses for AI, like creating content or building websites based on specific inputs, kind of more like the AI generality or generalist school that Angela was talking about. But I want to focus more on the comments that came out of a panel at a conference I attended in Las Vegas this past spring, the Intelligent Content Conference. The specific panel that I'm referencing here focused on the future of content with heavy emphasis on what does AI mean for content strategists and content creators going forward. And the panel seemed to speak more to the possibilities than the limitations, any limitations that AI might put on a content strategist. So for instance, Sam Hahn, the director of Big Data and Personalization at the Washington Post, noted that while AI can do simple content creation, humans are still needed to process or do more of the nuanced work of building context. Likewise, Pavan Arora, the head of content at IBM Watson, and Val Swisher, the CEO of consulting firm Content Rules, both made the good point that content strategists will need to make content consumable for AI. And that's something that we'll talk about more throughout our presentation. So the consensus from this panel seemed to be that AI can process those large volumes of content, but humans will still be vital to the success of any cognitive solution.
So the industry perspectives that Jillian heard at the Intelligent Content Conference is consistent with the perspectives across the industry. So Seth Early recently published an article with a catchy saying, "There is no AI without IA." That is, there is no artificial intelligence without information architecture. And Jillian and I very much agree with that sentiment. Businesses can't suddenly turn to AI technology for an automatic business solution, but they do need to begin priming their digital ecosystems in order to accommodate AI capability now. They should have done it yesterday. So if you haven't done it yesterday, you should do it now. But how do we do that? By structuring enterprise content with a robust information architecture in collaboration with UX designers and engineers. Content strategists have to think about how content is categorized and how it's prioritized. We create content models, we provide labels, and we tag content to create rationalized metadata and taxonomies. We design site search experiences and site navigation experiences. And now we can annotate content in order for them to become training data. All of that requires strong information architecture. This is related to the need to create structured and adaptive content for the web. In order to build functional chunks of content, we have to be more mindful of their purpose within an experience. When will pieces of content show up? Why? And where? LDS has been talking about this need for adaptive content for a while now. And at this point, adaptive content is more easily consumable for the end user and AI. Content strategists know how to make content consumable, both for humans and AI, that is. So, the role of the content strategist will evolve once she oversees this input-output process when AI comes into play. Robin Bordeaux, the CEO of Crowdflower, came up with this formula. AI equals TD plus ML plus HITL. That's not like a complex mathematical formula. It's just artificial intelligence equals training data plus machine learning plus human in the loop. So AI is not just machine learning. It needs data, and it needs the human in the loop. So when we think of the content strategist as the human in the loop, what's our role? One, we provide the training data. We annotate the training data. We structure the training data in order for the AI to learn from it and to read. And we clean up the data so that it can be readable. About 80% of labor for data scientists today is cleaning up data, structuring it, labeling it, in order for it to be useful to the AI. Content strategists are already doing that, or doing something like it for web experiences when we're making adaptive content for an omni-channel experience. We need to become more mindful of how usable content becomes training data for machine learning. So we're experts in the nature of content with an eye toward the nature of AI processing. We will work more closely with data scientists to provide AI with the structured material for processing that it needs. Another role for the human in the loop for the content strategist is that we provide meaningful contexts and apply real-world logic to the tasks that machines carry out. And so very recently, there was a media scare about Facebook building an AI that they needed to shut down because the AIs, in conversation with each other, developed a new language that wasn't English. This was a little bit of a false alarm, as some news and tech sites have clarified. But it gained a lot of momentum very quickly because the story speaks to that almost archetypal now fear that AI marks our doom. The real story was that Facebook was trying to design a system that can negotiate with human beings, and they were somewhat successful in that their AIs arrived at a mutually agreeable solution that divided a set of objects through a series of negotiations. But the designers didn't provide enough context. We need context and parameters that limited their communication to understandable English. So the AIs just created a shorthand, because they can, to speed up the negotiation process. This is an example of how a content strategist needs to be in the loop to determine what kind of content gets exchanged as valid information?
So as Angela mentioned, content strategy and AI are increasingly partnering in the building of digital experiences. But as that happens, the shape of that partnership will differ depending on the context.
That's right.
Many AI experts agree on the types of tasks that AI can complete more quickly and accurately than humans. So gathering data, analyzing data, interpreting results. AI can do those tasks much more quickly at a greater scale and much more accurately than human beings. So where does the content strategist fit in? As AI takes on these more routine tasks of gathering and processing large volumes of data, the content strategist would still be needed to provide the interpretation of that data against real-world contexts. The central image here shows what that human-AI partnership looks like in some contexts. AI is the partner or assistant in content analysis, design, and maintenance, but the content strategist still sits at the center, providing judgment and synthesizing data with domain-specific contexts. So I mentioned in my comments a few moments ago this idea of domain knowledge and how AIs might be able to partner with content strategists. Content strategists have the domain knowledge that an AI doesn't necessarily have. But IBM's Watson Knowledge Studio is a good example of a tool that content strategists and other creators like developers can use to provide the domain knowledge that leads AI to process clean training data. So the Knowledge Studio allows developers and domain experts like content strategists to create customized annotators that can identify relationships in unstructured text. So on this slide, I've got an example of some unstructured text, in this case, the report of an accident. And to the right of that is a customized annotator that will help Watson to understand the relationships between mentions of specific text, for example, roadway, intersection, and lane. An AI processing this information doesn't necessarily understand the relationships between those types of terms. So this is the purpose of the custom annotators in Watson Knowledge Studio, is to provide at a very base level domain knowledge so that text or content that's being processed by an AI is not incomprehensible or the output of the AI is actually useful. The result, as you'll see on this slide, is unstructured text transformed into a structure that's more easily consumed by an AI like Watson. Since AIs like Watson need structure to provide meaningful analysis and insights, humans are still needed to provide the structure for that training data because we have the domain knowledge. And so a content strategist role might increasingly become that of teacher, teaching an AI like Watson about a specific domain so that it can provide meaningful analysis.
So the capacity to annotate texts and to allow AIs to learn from annotated texts has vast implications. I want to turn to advancements in healthcare because it's a field where much of the state-of-the-art developments are the most readily applicable. Mm-hmm. So Pawan Deshpande, CEO of Curata, did some research at MIT, and I wanted to capture it here because it shows the way that an AI can learn how to categorize text through a process of labeling. Here he helped design an AI that would determine the correct chronology of a patient's medical history from a set of doctor's notes that documented her history, the patient's history, out of order. So, for example, S1, S2, S5, they categorize these chunks of content that highlights or takes time-based descriptions. So there's a 32-year-old woman, there's something about 4 years, there's something about 3 months before admission, there's something about 18 months further down. And so through a process of categorization, the AI would read the notes, break it up into segments based on those numbers, and sort it accordingly. Other advances are being developed in Canada. The Vector Institute was established earlier this year, March of 2017, and it's one of 3 major institutions in Canada devoted to AI research. The other 2 are the Montreal Institute for Learning Algorithms and the Alberta Machine Intelligence Institute. Toronto has recently been hailed as the #1 city booming in tech right now, and the Vector Institute participates that. That's one of the major reasons why. So far, they've co-hosted a lecture series with the University of Toronto's Fields Institute, where leading researchers shared their findings. They've presented on developments such as being able to compound or multiply data sets to improve the accuracy in image processing and diagnosing pathologies. Another advancement reduced the amount of energy and data required, the amount of processing required for machine learning, so that it can function more quickly and on something as small as a mobile device. I sat in on a lecture where machine learning was able to diagnose diseases without seeing all of the symptoms. So, for example, a human doctor is able to diagnose disease based on symptomatology, and at times they're able to infer without checking off exactly all of the symptoms. Based on statistical prediction, machine learning can do something similar without having to see all the symptoms, with greater than 90% accuracy rate. So the accuracy rates actually rival that of a doctor. So those are some examples of developments happening right now. And right now, IBM Watson assists in cancer care departments. And I want to highlight 2 examples, one where it struggled and another where it succeeded. In 2013, MD Anderson bought Watson Health to support their oncology department, and they spent $62.1 million on it. They eventually abandoned the Watson project for a number of reasons. There was a lack of project focus, they had trouble with the culture of adoption, so doctors didn't want to work with Watson, and doctors couldn't adjust their behavior to integrate Watson into their practice. Most importantly, though, it was the integrity of their data. This contributed to the resignation of MD Anderson's president, Ronald DePinho. On the other hand, Memorial Sloan Kettering purchased Watson in 2014, and they experienced greater success. Watson has contributed to MSK's ongoing digital transformation, and the major difference is the condition and amount of data that they have. So they had greater access to more data, and that data was cleaner than MD Anderson's. So the way that their content is digitized and structured marks the difference between tens of millions of dollars. This highlights how important clean content environments are to a business.
Absolutely.
Okay, so what about other digital experiences? When we talk about chatbots and conversational UX, that means that visually there's no interface. It's interface free, but that doesn't mean that there isn't a conversational interface. This is an example of where natural language processing results in our ability to chat with AI assistants free of screen or robot body. And these assistants are always listening, so their presence becomes a little more atmospheric. But content strategists still have to deal with the stuff of the conversation. There's still metadata, there's still structured content, specific lexicons, vocabulary, and personality behind the conversation that we would have with a chatbot. All of that we would need to design. Programs like SaySpring can train chatbots with distinct lexicons so that assistants can help you on projects, for example. Chatbots can answer HR-related questions like, what are your benefits? What's your eligibility for time off? How much time off do you have? Even though the chatbot is different from other digital experiences, it would still need a content model, similar taxonomies, and it would be subject to an editorial guideline.
So chatbots and voice interfaces aren't the only area where AI is fueling new digital experiences. LDS's recent Aerial project offers a way for us to think about how to design for new experiences. Now, LDS partnered with the drone services company Aerial Applications to produce a user experience interface that seamlessly communicates AI-processed images from the Aerial-provided drones with first responders in the wake of a disaster. So what you see here in this slide is some of those images captured by a drone and then processed by an AI. So our focus in the project was mostly on user experience, but there's also a potential role for content strategists in building such experiences. For instance, content strategists could help to provide more meaningful training data, which is something that we've been talking about throughout this presentation, by labeling and tagging image descriptions to be more precise. So in the case of the images shown here, instead of just down tree, a content strategist might tailor the training data to specify down tree on a car or down tree in a roadway. And this would make for the more specified training data that would help an AI to become more accurate in its image processing over time. So that's kind of a kind of role that a content strategist might play in designing for these new types of experiences. Another area where machines and humans might partner is design. The Grid is an AI that creates websites based on specific content inputs. Now, this sounds like an interesting and possibly, revolutionary innovation, but the Grid has come under criticism, particularly from designers, who fault the slowness of the websites and the limited design aesthetics. These criticisms demonstrate that even as AI increasingly takes on these types of tasks like website design or content creation, content strategists, visual designers, and experience designers are still needed to rationalize design against real-world contexts. So AI still needs humans, that human in the loop that we talked about, in order to be productive and useful. So as Angela and I have shown in our talk today, AI is already having an impact on how content is created, managed, and evolved. But there are still numerous possibilities, probably that we haven't even thought of, on the horizon for how this technology can be leveraged. As we design for these new AI-driven experiences, we'll need to consider how humans will interact with AI. Because as we've touched on throughout this presentation, AI still needs humans to succeed. For now, AI can't work alone.
Thanks very much.